Okay, we are in 5.6. This is the last section of Unit 5. We are switching between forms. So in the last several sections, we looked at standard form, intercept form, and vertex form to be able to graph. So now, today, we are going to be talking about how to switch between different forms. So first off, let's write down what the forms are. Standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay. Intercept form is y equals a x minus p and x minus q. All right, and then vertex form is y equals a parenthesis x minus h close parenthesis squared plus k. All right, those are the three forms. You'll need to memorize these and write those down on the test, okay? And this is also important for when you are given a graph and we want to write the forms, okay? So, first thing up, if we have a problem in standard form and we want to go to intercept form, we will factor. All right, we've talked about factoring the last 2 units. So if you have any problems with factoring, make sure you come and talk to me about that. All right, and we will do examples of doing all of these. If we have a problem in intercept form and we want to switch it to standard form, we distribute. Okay. If we have a equation in standard form and we want to switch it to vertex form, we complete the square. Okay. All right, and we've talked about in our last unit when we were solving, we could solve by completing the square. And here we won't be solving, but we'll be writing it by completing the square. Okay, and then if we have it in vertex form and we want to bring it to standard form, we distribute. Okay, so write all those down. Make sure you memorize the forms, the 3 forms, and we'll also have a problem that is similar to for these ones where we're given an equation and you'll need to write all 3 forms. So obviously all of these examples are already in one of the forms, so really you can just rewrite that again and then either factor, complete the square, or distribute to find the other 2 forms, okay? So for A, this equation is in which form? And you can look at it and it would say, you would tell me, oh, Mr. Warner, it is in intercept form. Intercept form. Okay? So now we don't have to worry about that one. We already have one of them, so we just need to find the other 2. So if we have a problem that's in intercept form, we follow the diagram. What we're going to do next is we're going to distribute to get our standard form. So we'll write standard. Okay, so to find standard form, we distribute. So I'll rewrite this equation here, y equals okay, so distributing, you can use foiling or you can use the box method or whichever method that you would prefer. Okay, so I'm going to do FOIL. So FOIL, the F of FOIL stands for the first 2 terms, the first term in each of these binomial. So that gives us y equals x squared. The O in FOIL is the outside terms. O for outside, that gives us positive 6x. I in FOIL is the inside terms. That gives us a negative 4x. And then the L in FOIL is the last terms. Oops, sorry, I totally messed that up. Last terms. Awesome. Okay, so that gives us negative 24. All we do after that is we combine like terms, and that gives us y equals x squared plus 2x minus 24. Okay, now that we have it in standard form, we want to write it in vertex form. Okay, so vertex form is a little more complicated. When we're getting into vertex form, we complete the square. And when we did completing the square, we were using it to solve. So our equation here we'll rewrite, because you have to do it from standard form. That's y equals x squared plus 2x minus 24. All right. When we were solving using completing the square, y was 0. So we're going to rewrite this just so that it's y equals 0. We'll put the y back in when we're done. But until then, we will leave it like this so that it looks like what we did before. All right. So when we complete the square, we move the constant to the other side. All right. So that gives us 24. And we're going to leave a spot for when we complete the square. All right. So I left a spot for both sides because if you do something on one side, you have to do it to the other side. And what goes in these two spots will always be our new constant, which is b over 2 squared. And for our problem, b is our middle term, which is 2. So we do 2 divided by 2 squared. That gives us 1. Actually, I want this to be 1, green. Okay, so it's 1. We'll put that in for our two spots. Now we completed this square. Once it's completed, we can write it as a binomial squared. X, and what comes in here will always be our b divided by 2. So this is our b divided by 2. It's also what's inside of our parenthesis over here. So you can come and put that in our parenthesis, which is a positive 1. Our other side, we just combine those. 24 plus 1 is 25. Okay, and now this looks just like we were doing by solving, but what we would do in our last unit, we'd square both sides, we'd subtract 1 to the other side so that x would be by itself. But we don't want to solve, we just want to have the equation in vertex form. So at this point, what we do is we subtract the number we have over here, which here is 25, we subtract it to both sides. Okay, that cancels, and then at this point we put the y back in. So y equals x plus 1 squared minus 25. All right, so you may, I don't know, it's a lot of work, okay, and on the test, there's only going to be maybe 2 problems where you'll need to, 2 or 3 problems, I think it's just 2, where you'll need to switch between forms. So if for some reason, like one of the problems I told you is going to be just like this, or it may not be given in intercept form, maybe they'll be giving you some other form, but they will give you a form and you'll need to write the other 2. if you can't remember how to do one of them, at least do the other so you can get half of your points, okay? And if you have questions about this, you can come over or do it again, come to class and ask some questions. So B is basically the same. It's also in intercept form. So we will go and do a different one where it's different. So C, let's do C. See what form what form that it is in is standard, okay? So if we have a problem in standard form, to find the other two, we will do completing the square to get the vertex, and we'll factor to get the intercept form. Okay, so let's do the easier one first. Let's do the intercept form. Okay, so we're going to start using the exact same. We're going to write it in our standard form. Okay, and if you remember when we were factoring, because that's what we're going to be doing now, is factoring, you multiply the first and last term. So oftentimes we'll just say, I'll call it glasses. So you multiply those together, that gives us, oh yeah, sorry, and I should fix this. This should be a positive 15. Okay, I keep messing that up when in class. So it should be positive 15 to make it work. Okay, and all of your problems in the test, they will work. So there's no point for me to try and show you one that doesn't work. All right, so we multiply, that gives us a positive 15x squared. We want to find two things that add up to give us a negative 8x. Okay, so you think about that. You can come up with, again, you can start listing things, 1 and 15. You can't do 2, but you could do 3 and 5. And those are the two choices. So obviously it's going to be a 3 and 5, because that will give us 8. But if we want it to be a negative 8, we're going to use a negative 5x and a negative 3x. Okay, so to write it in intercept form, we'll write our two parentheses. There's no A is 1 for this one, so we wouldn't put anything in front of those two parentheses. But what we will put in is an x and an x, and then we will put in these numbers. So this gives us a minus 5, and this will give us a minus 3. And that is in intercept form. Okay? All right, and then vertex form. So we still need to do vertex, which we did that above. And it's kind of difficult, but if you work on it and watch and practice, you will be just fine. So in standard form, we remove the y for later. We put it back in later, so we're going to have 0 equals x squared minus 8x plus 15. We will move the constant to the other side. All right, and so we have negative 15. We leave a spot for when we complete the square. We have to add it to both sides. Okay, same thing. We're going to use this this equation right here to give us our constant that we're going to replace. So c equals b, which is negative 8 over 2 squared. That gives us a negative 4 squared, or 16. So we will add 16 to both sides. Once we've done that, we will combine like terms for on the left side. For the left side, that gives us a positive 1. And then on the right side, we will write it as a binomial squared. And it will be x, always will be our variable. And then what we'll plug in will be what's in this parenthesis, negative 8 over 2, or you could say b over 2. All right, so that's negative 4. Okay, now we want to move this the right side back to the left side. We'll subtract 1 to both sides, and we will replace the y back in. So that would cancel, that would give us a 0. And we put the y back in where the 0 goes. So that gives us x minus 4 squared minus 1. Okay. All right. If you can think of a better way to come up with that, let me know. You could always search on Google if you want to see if there's different ways to do that. But this is the way I've been teaching it. Okay? All right, D is about the same. It's in standard form. So we will skip that, and we will do another example, but using vertex form. All right? This is a nice one to do because we don't have to complete the square. So we will need to first, if we look at our flow chart, if it's in vertex form, we next will need to put it in standard form. Okay, so I'll rewrite this in here. But before I plug stuff in, remember that when we have something that's to a power, it's the same thing as multiplying what's underneath, or the number that's underneath the exponent, we multiply it that many times. So we multiply itself, x minus 2, multiply itself 2 times. So x minus 2. All right, so make sure you can know how to do that. Otherwise, it might be kind of difficult. All right, so these are equivalent. And then we still have a minus 9. So what we're going to do is we're distributing. So we do the FOIL, the first terms, we multiply the first terms, x squared for FOIL, f of FOIL, and then O, we do the outside, that's the O for FOIL, minus 2x. I for FOIL is the inside terms, and then the L for FOIL is the last terms. And don't forget, we still have this minus 9. So after that, we combine like terms. So here's two things that are combined like terms, and these are like terms. So that gives us y equals x squared minus 4x minus 5. Okay? Just remember, if I'm moving a little too quick, you can pause anytime. Okay? So we also need to do it in Intercept form. Okay, so we will start with our standard form, y equals x squared minus 4x minus 5, and we will factor. We multiply the first and last terms, that gives us negative 5x squared, two things that add up to give us a negative 4x, and that will give you negative 5x and a positive 1x. Okay, after that, since a equals 1, we don't need to do it the longer way, so we just take these. We always will have x and x when a equals 1, and then we plug in our negative 5 and our positive 1. So negative 5 and a positive 1. Okay? All right, so if you have any questions or want to go over some of the other ones, let me know. As far as I know on the test, there won't be any problems where we're switching forms and where it's any more difficult than this. So, and we'll talk more about this when we're reviewing. Okay. All right, so we've done the hard part. I think this is the easier part of today. So given a graph, we can write the equations in vertex, intercept, and standard form. So vertex form, so I'm going to rewrite these again. Vertex form is y equals a minus h squared plus k. Okay, and here we can write intercept form for the next one. Y equals a times x minus p times x minus q. And then down here we have standard form, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so remember, you need to memorize these to get full points on the test. And not only just to write those down, you'll need to, but when you're given a graph, to be able to write it, like you're going to have a problem that has a graph like this, and we're going to want you to write it in one of these forms. Okay, so if you don't remember what the form is, then you're kind of going to have a hard time. All right, but there will be hints on the test, because obviously some of the forms, like in multiple choice, you'll need to choose one of the answers, and that will maybe kind of remind you what the form looks like. Okay, but it needs to be written just like this when you do it on the test. All right, so if we have a graph and we want to write an equation in vertex form, what are the things that we need to know to fill out this equation right here? All right, so obviously we're going to need to have a, so the a value, and we'll also need to have what on the graph it corresponds to h and k. Well, that is our vertex. Our vertex is h comma k. All right. So for this example, if you look at it, our vertex is right here. We would write it down as 2 comma negative 2. And our a value, remember, if we have it already, if we have the equation already done, we look at the a and we use that to get our growth pattern. Well, here we already have the graph, so our growth pattern is going to be over 1, and looking at it, it goes up 2. So we know that a equals 2. After that, we just plug it into our vertex form. So y equals a, and a is 2, and then we need to put in our h, which is 2, and that's squared, and we add our k, which k is negative, so it's just going to be minus 2. Okay? I feel like that is not too bad. As long as you can figure out what the a value is by looking at the graph and the vertex, which is always just that point, the turning point. All right, okay, intercept form. We will still need to have the a value. And then, if you remember, when we were given an equation and we were graphing, what were we able to find really quick? Well, it turned out to be the X-intercepts. Okay, so the X-intercepts, those are ordered pairs. And one of our X-intercepts is right here. It would be 1, 0, and the other is 3, 0. All right, and in our intercept form, P is going to be the X value for one of our X-intercepts, and Q will be for the other. Okay, and the order doesn't matter, so if you had it switched, that's just fine. So we plug those things in, we'll get y equals a, which is still 2, x minus p, and p is 1, and then x minus p, or q, which is 3. So that is our equation in intercept form. Okay, last but not least is the standard form. This one's a little more I think, a little more difficult. You actually have to use like an equation to come up for the b. So I would highly recommend that if you're given a graph and you need to know what the standard form is, I would probably choose one of these two, the vertex form or the intercept form. I would probably say intercept form would be the easiest. And then just distribute. Okay? Foil these out, and you would end up getting standard form. Okay? Otherwise, it's a little longer, or I don't know. You decide. Okay? So I'm going to do it right here. Information needed. Well, we still have our a value. Right away, if we look at our graph, if you recall in, I think it was 5.2 or 5.3, we talked about key features. And the key feature of equation in standard form, we can find the y-intercept really easy. Y-intercept. And that will always be 0, c. So we can find our c value fairly easy. The only thing that's a little more difficult is the b value. So if you recall back when we were graphing, and if we had an equation in standard form and we wanted to find the axis of symmetry, we used an equation called, or x equals negative b over 2a. And that would give us our axis of symmetry. Well, giving a graph, we're going to kind of do it the backwards way. We can look at the graph and we can come up and say, oh, well, our axis of symmetry here is 2. So x is 2. We'll just plug that into that equation. We still don't know what b is, but we do know what a is. And a is our a value. So here is 2. So you plug that in, or simplify that, we get 2 equals negative b over 4. And then we'll multiply both sides by 4 to give us 8 equals negative b. And then we'll multiply both sides by a negative 1, so we get b equals negative 8. Okay, so now we have b equals negative 8. Here we have c. C is our, yeah, I didn't write that already. So this would be, for our y-intercept is 0, 6. So c equals 6, and a is 2. So once you find those three things, then we can plug that into our standard form. It would give us 2x squared minus 8x plus 6, and that would be your answer. Okay, so just to show you how I would do it, is I would start with the intercept form. So I'll write that right here, y equals 2 times x minus 1 times x minus 3. And then I would just distribute. I would FOIL. So we'd get y equals 2 times x squared minus 3x minus 1x plus 3. And then I would distribute the 2 as so to all three terms. Actually, I would combine like terms first. So you combine these like terms, that gives us negative 4x. And then I would distribute. That gives us y equals 2x squared minus 8x plus 6. All right, and those are equivalent. Okay, so either way is fine. As you see, this is pretty quick, given that you already have the intercept form. Okay, so I guess it may be a little longer I don't know. It's up to you. So you can try whichever one you want. I'm not going to require you that you do it one way or the other. Okay, so here's some examples. Let's do 2A. So given this graph, we want to do a vertex form. We need A and we need the vertex. So vertex is going to be right here, 3, -2. And our A value, well, we look at the growth pattern, over 1 up 2. So A must be 2. Okay, plug that into our equation for the vertex. Y equals 2 times x minus 3 squared minus 2. Okay, remember y equals A. Okay, so here this is h is positive, so you plug it in, but there's already a negative here, so you don't need to worry about switching it when you plug it in. Okay? And then intercept form, A equals 2 again. We need A equals 2. And we'll also need the x-intercepts. So x-intercepts, we look at the graph. We have 2, 0, and 4, 0. After that, we can just plug it into our equation. Y equals 2, x minus 2, and x minus 4. Okay? And all of these equations are equivalent, so you can always distribute for both of these two problems, and that would give us the standard form. So here I will do that right here. Y equals 2 times x minus 2 times x minus 4, and distribute. We do an F for FOIL. That gives us x squared. And then O is negative 4x minus 2x and positive 8. Okay? And then we distribute, or we combine like terms. That gives negative 6x plus 8x squared, 2, and then we distribute that too. Okay, and that is the answer. Like I said, you could do it the other way if you'd like. Okay, so all the examples on the test will be much similar, or similar to this one, okay? Other ones like this one, as you see, if you wanted to do the intercept form, you can't really, I mean, we don't know what the X intercepts are, okay? So we won't have a problem like that where the X-intercept's not on a nice number like 5, 0, okay? All right, but you can still do the vertex form and the standard form. All right, so here you could look at this. A is negative 2. We go over 1, down 2. And then the vertex is at 1, 3. So if you wanted to write the equation, you get y equals negative 2 x minus 1 squared plus 3. Okay, and then standard form, you would want to distribute this equation. Okay, so how you would do that is you would do y equals negative 2, and then would write it as x minus 1 times x minus 1 plus 3. And would FOIL y equals negative 2 times x squared minus, and this turns out to be minus 2x plus 1 plus 3, so that's still there. And then we distribute that negative 2 equals negative 2x squared plus 4x minus 2 plus 3, and then combine these two like terms, and you're done. Okay. All right, and then C, obviously here, we can't do the intercept form because there are no X-intercepts. And there will not be a problem like that on the test either, okay? So all the graphs will be nice, more like A. All right? So that is everything for today. If you have any questions, let me know. And I will go over this homework really quick just in case anyone has any questions. So, first off, is it possible for an equation to be in two forms at once? If so, list the forms and give an example. All right. So there's one that I can think of. If you come up with another one, let me know. That would be cool. It will be standard form and vertex form. So looking at this problem, it is in standard form where b equals 0, our middle term is missing. And this is also vertex form where h is 0. Okay, so these two forms are, or this equation is in both forms. So if you give a problem like that on the test or in your homework, you can go straight and do either way that you would like. Okay? All right. So you could write down what the vertex is really quick. Vertex is 0, -4. Okay? Or you could use what we learned with standard form. All right? And then I also taught or showed people one of these examples. Okay, so zoom. Okay, this problem is in standard form, and we need to do vertex form and intercept form. So I did the vertex form for everyone in the class. So just a quick review of that. So I rewrote the equation that's right here, and then we set y equal to 0, just like how we did it when we were solving. To make sure you don't solve, because we don't need to solve, we move the constant to the other side by subtracting 24 to both sides, and then we leave a spot when we do it so that we can put our seed to complete the square. So use this equation. B is -10. Put that in and it's 25, so you add 25 to both sides. Here we combine like terms on the left side to give us 1. And then since our right side is a perfect square, we can write it as a binomial squared. It will be x minus 5 quantity squared. Okay, and then I subtract 1 from both sides so that everything's on the right side, and then we put the y back in. And that is the vertex form. Intercept form isn't as bad, so you're just going to do glasses. So you're going to find 24 and also something that adds up to give us -10. So that gives us possibly a -6 and a -4. And then we write our equation in intercept form. A equals 1, so we don't need to write that down. But we have our two parentheses, x minus 6 from here, and x minus 4. Okay? And that is the equation. Okay? And then these are just like exactly the same as what we did in our last, or not our last, but in our notes. Okay? Vertex form, intercept form, and standard form. And as you notice, all of the graphs, the vertex and the axis of symmetry and the y-intercepts are all in good spots. Okay. Maybe we could do 13 really quick if you want to watch it, because this one is a little different. Okay. So First thing is the vertex form, so A equals something, and our vertex is, at this point, negative, or 5, comma, negative 8. Okay, so we want to look at this and we want to find out what our growth is. So if you go over 1, make sure you need to, like these are going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whereas over here there's not a tick for negative 3, negative 1, negative 5, and negative 7. Okay, so if you kind of think about that, this is about a half. Right here, if we did, cut this in half. So when we do our growth, we go over 1, and here we're only going up a half. We're going to 7.5. We're going from negative 8 to negative 7.5. And then it goes over 1, and then it goes up 3.5. Okay, so from here, you can see that our growth is 1, and then we go up 1/2. Okay, so A equals 1/2. Okay. All right, but then still we're just going to plug stuff in. So for vertex form, it's going to be A equals 1/2 x minus 5 squared minus 8. Okay. Intercept form, we'll need our X-intercepts. So A is still 1/2. X-intercepts are 1, 0 and 9, 0. Intercept form, y equals A is 1/2, x minus 1, and x minus 9. And then standard form, like I said, you can go and do it, what I showed you, or you can just distribute. So here I'm going to distribute I'm just going to write it right here. So we'll distribute x to x, that gives us x squared, x to negative 9, that gives us negative 9x, negative 1 to x is negative x, and then negative 1 times a negative 9 gives us a positive 9. Combine these like terms, that gives us a negative 10x, and then we just distribute our 1/2. So x equals 1/2 x squared minus 5x plus 9/2. Okay? All right, so I think everything else you should be able to do. Looking down here just for the review, here all you need to do is factor completely for these two problems, and you should already be able to do that because that's what we're doing. We did right here was factoring. So let me know if you have any questions, and good luck.